One of my worst fortes.
Good afternoon. This is Barton Morris. I'm from the Cannabis Legal Group, and this is Facebook Live on a Monday edition. And before I introduce our guest, I just want to remind everybody that we are having a seminar on October 11th in Cobo Hall, at Cobo Hall. It's going to be on, of course, cannabis compliance and licensing, and that is why I am super excited to introduce an individual who is going to be speaking at the seminar, somebody that I have had the pleasure of working with over the past year or so, and I am super excited to introduce him and continue to work with him, especially as we start getting going in our industry here in Michigan. So I want to introduce Jordan Wellington, and I'm going to try to do this split screen. Jordan, how you doing?
I'm excellent. I can't see the split screen, but I'm assuming everybody else can see both of us.
No, it's not working. It says click sources for this. Oh, I know. There we go. You can't see the split screen? That's all right.
No, but I'm on Skype and you're on Facebook Live, so as long as everybody's following along with our technical difficulties, I'm sure we'll be fine.
We're good. All right, so where are you calling in from, Jordan?
I am in Denver, Colorado, in the wonderful Simplifya offices, our headquarters here in Denver.
Sweet, and as I like to reflect on Denver, it is basically like ground zero for cannabis, for like commercial regulated cannabis, of course, of the recreational nature. I have been learning a tremendous amount by obviously working with Vicente Cederberg, with you, by going out there and like seeing the industry. It is something that anybody that's involved in the industry should, I encourage, do, is go to Denver, go to Colorado, and learn as much as you can, because that's what's coming here, you know. And people are really focused on licensing right now and applications, but they don't. I mean, I shouldn't say they don't, but a lot of them are thinking about what's going to be important in the future, and that's why I wanted to have you here with us in Detroit and introduce the software and talk about, importantly, like what our industry has in store in Michigan. So before we get to that, though, I'd like for you to kind of just give us your background on compliance in the cannabis industry.
Thank you. So I'm a Jersey boy. I grew up just outside New York City and moved to Denver, Colorado in 2012. My background is I'm an attorney focusing mostly on government affairs and public policy things, writing bills and things like that. After moving out to Colorado, I had the privilege of working at the General Assembly in the House Majority Office and was given the responsibility of implementing the legalization of cannabis on behalf of the General Assembly. Unlike a lot, they didn't have a lot of staff, so even though I thought I was going to be working with a whole team, they literally just kicked me into the deep end and said, kind of sort it out yourself. Here's Dan Babone, the House Majority Leader, and here's a couple of other representatives that'll help you. So I implemented legalization first for the General Assembly, and then after the legislative session was over and all the bills were passed, I was kind of the guy that knew who all the people were and what all the words meant and where all the landmines in the negotiations were. So I was fortunate enough to then be hired by the Marijuana Enforcement Division to also handle implementation of legalization for them as well, where I served as the senior regulatory analyst, managing both stakeholder engagements, so organizing all of their working groups, chairing many of them, and then doing kind of the public policy nuts and bolts of drafting many of the regulations that govern medical and adult use cannabis even still today in Colorado. So that was about 5 years ago now, and really changed the entire trajectory of my life. I was a policy generalist, and now I'm a cannabis regulatory expert, as it were. Since leaving public service, I joined the Vicente Cederberg Law Firm, helping to create their compliance department and advised really businesses all over the country on cannabis regulation. I continued my work in public policy, having the opportunity to meet with policymakers from all over the globe. We had delegations from all over the United States, from Vermont and Maine all the way down to southern California, as well as overseas, whether you're talking about Canada, Mexico. My favorite being when an entire delegation of Colombians came, and we got to advise the Colombian government on cannabis, which was just fascinating hearing that the Colombians were coming to Colorado to learn about weed. So about 3 years ago, we started cooking up the idea for Simplifya, which is where I work now. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer at Simplifya. We are the nation's leading cannabis regulatory software, advising cannabis businesses, law firms, consultants, and governments on how to kind of efficiently manage and oversee compliance obligations for the cannabis industry through a variety of proprietary services and content that we offer exclusively to cannabis businesses.
That is quite a resume. So I got a couple questions that came out of that. First, you talked about the General Assembly. Obviously, that is the legislative body, I presume, that governs over Colorado, right?
Yeah, that's our state legislature, our House of Representatives and Senate. And I worked in the House Majority Office and then was drafted over to work on the Senate side once the bills went through the House.
So you were there at the time then, was it Proposition 64 was passed in 2014?
The bill it was a constitutional amendment. It passed in 2012, and I worked at the legislature in the 2013 legislative session.
Okay, and then so you helped with implementation, and I assume that's probably how you got to know the guys from Vicente Cedarburg at that time. Is that right?
Yes, Christian Cedarburg was lobbying on behalf of the campaign, and Christian and I got to know each other during that process.
And then you moved to the Marijuana Enforcement Division, which is the regulatory body that regulates and enforces the market in Colorado. So how long were you there?
I was at the Marijuana Enforcement Division for about 8 or 9 months, handling implementation of legalization. The way the civil service program works in Colorado is that I could be hired as a temporary employee for about 9 months worth of time, provided that I didn't get any benefits, wasn't an official employee. I was kind of like a temporary hire. And in that role, they didn't need to go through the, several month process of hiring somebody, which was really important because we had a lot of constitutional deadlines to get work product out. And so when that time was coming to an end, I really needed to make a decision about whether I was going to stay in the public sector, which is really where I'd spent most of my life at that point, or transition to the private sector. And I felt as though if I were to stay with the Marijuana Enforcement Division and they were to carve out and create a full-time employee for me, an FTE in government parlance, really would have been a several years long project. And so that was the appropriate time for me to leave the state and join Vicente Cedarburg and kind of join the cannabis industry in a different way.
That's awesome. And that's very lucky for Vicente Cedarburg, obviously, and for Simplifya and for us as well as in the Cannabis Legal Group, because we have the opportunity to work with you in all these different ways. So let's move on then to compliance in our industry. Can you talk about what's the importance of it as far as in the cannabis industry?
So, I guess I have the opportunity of working in what I think is really kind of one of the most interesting and, as Brooke from our team likes to say, sexy areas of the cannabis industry in compliance. And so it's kind of one of those things that sounds really boring at first until you really get to understand what's at stake and why it's so important. Cannabis businesses operated with what's known in legalese as a privileged license. And what it means to have a privileged license is you can't just open up a restaurant. You can't just open up a cannabis business the way you would a clothing store or anything else, where if you're zoned in the right area, you can just open up business, get government sign-offs, and start operating. Instead, you have a special license on top of all of the other licenses that you need to get, like your wholesale tax license and your general business license and your certification from the Secretary of State and everything else. You need a special license from the Marijuana Enforcement Division. That license subjects you to special regulations and special laws that control how you operate your business. And if you do not follow those laws, they can fine you, suspend you, which makes you close your doors and cease operating, which can be a huge financial detriment. and even pull your license, revoke your license. And if they do that, you're not allowed to operate anymore. So, a lot of businesses have a lot of risk out there when they first start operating, and that risk comes from competitors, that risk comes from markets, that comes from consumer reactions, and general regulations. And cannabis businesses are subject to all of those kinds of things, whether it's the Fire and Building Code or OSHA regulations. But cannabis businesses also have a special subset of regulations and a special set of regulators that are focused exclusively on them. That creates a lot of additional risk for those businesses around compliance, making sure that your staff knows how to do things correctly, follows those regulations, and maintains all your documents so that when the regulators do come knocking, you can show them that you're a quality operator, and that even if you've made a couple of mistakes here and there, that they won't throw the book at you, they won't pull your license, because you're really, in general, a good quality operator.
You talked about it, that privileged license that cannabis businesses enjoy if they're so lucky to get one. Would you agree that same type of license is what's necessary, and how you term that same license for those businesses here in Michigan?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the kind of thing we're really going to be getting into the weeds on at the seminar on October 11th. But it's a privileged license. It is a privilege to work in the cannabis industry. It is dissimilar to other industries. You can't just go and start operating. And so in Michigan, while businesses are getting ready and launching, they need to understand that there is this extra special layer of government scrutiny that they're being put under. And that requires adjustments to operating procedures and things like that. We deal all the time where folks were like, well, it would be more efficient if I were to run my business this way. And it's like, well, that's nice, but the rules say you can't. And so you guys need to make a decision about your risk tolerance in relation to following that regulation versus violating it and the potential consequences associated with that. Again, we've seen it time and time again. It just happened in Oregon very recently. We've had it happen in Colorado, where a business violates the regulations in a certain way, and the regulators just revoke their license. Operations that are valued at millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars vanish overnight because of operational compliance issues. And it's absolutely critical that businesses recognize this as a point of risk, invest in mitigation to make sure that they protect their license, because there's just not a lot of industries out there in the world where a $12 an hour employee can tank everything very, very quickly. But here, you don't manage your inventory well, you get caught diverting marijuana, you keep selling to people underage. Those are $12 an hour employees that you're putting in a very sensitive position. Maybe they're $15 an hour employees. We always like, higher wages here at Simplifya, but, your business can vanish overnight, and, you need to protect that asset, and remember that compliance is kind of the key to doing that.
Can you talk about how often you may see something like that happening, like in Colorado after several years of being in operation? I think people don't quite understand how common or how easy that may be.
We see a lot of enforcement activity across the board, and it just depends on the nature of the enforcement, the violation, the relationship with the regulators, that determines the punishment. It's got a lot of similarities to the criminal justice system, where there are prosecutors, if you will, at the Attorney General's office. There are businesses that commit administrative crimes or legal violations of law. And so we see everything from fines totaling thousands and thousands of dollars, all the way through license revocation. And the Marijuana Enforcement Division is constantly working through those with different businesses. And I'd also point out that you have to remember that if the Marijuana Enforcement Division fines you $15,000 for violating regulations, that is not $15,000 in lost revenue to your business. It's probably closer to $115,000 in lost revenue, because in addition to the government fine, you're going to have a significant legal bill as your attorneys work through this negotiation with the state. And you've got lost time of executives and staff and labor resources that are not being spent on building your business, and instead are being spent on negotiating that settlement with the regulators. And so, even if you look at a fine of, that was just $15,000, that's not that big of a deal. No, it is a big deal, and it's a blemish on your record. And so if you make a violation again, you're looking at, a $100,000 fine and $250,000 in cost and expenses. Or if you violate the regulations enough, they will just pull your license. industries. So there's no reason to expect it.
Sorry about that. Jordan, we just lost the signal for a second, so I think we're back on now. So I think we only lost maybe like 5 seconds here. So apologize about that. The last thing you were just talking about, obviously, is the types of penalties that can happen when somebody doesn't maintain their compliance. And certainly, it would be absolutely devastating given the fact that, as a lot of people know here, it takes a significant amount of time, effort, expense, and like resources, and they're like just like you have to have good fortune as well. You know, sometimes it's just a matter of making sure you have the right place. A lot of people think that they've got everything perfect, and all of a sudden they don't make it because of whatever reason. So you have to have good fortune as well. And then to put that in jeopardy, and then to have to actually lose that would be absolutely devastating, given everything that people have to do in order to be able to get to that point of just to be able to operate. Can you talk about what types of things that operators do in order to ensure that they maintain their compliance?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different kind of best practices that we've seen over the years. My talk at the seminar on October 11th is going to really get into the details of best practices and some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years that I'm not going to divulge now because we got to do a good preview for our seminar. But there's a lot of different ways that businesses can kind of protect against compliance. First and foremost, having a trained and knowledgeable staff, and that matters for mom and pops who, can't maybe afford to have an in-house compliance officer, but do really need to have at least someone on staff that's responsible for inventory management, and a manager that understands kind of some of the basics, and then supplementing that manager with training, or a tool like Simplifya, which is a really, really easy way to make sure your staff understands compliance obligations and hold everybody on your team accountable, all the way through up large-scale businesses that will hire full-time compliance officers with salaries $40, $50, $60, $100,000 or more that are responsible for managing and maintaining compliance at their operations. So we see businesses investing in staff. We see businesses investing in training. We see businesses more and more investing in software. Thanks to Simplifya, we're pretty unique. There's not a lot of folks out there like us, but we're really starting to see a lot of growth in people understanding the efficiency that we can help produce for their teams as well. And then on top of that, engaging with industry groups so that you're abreast of changes in the law, right? There usually is some type of trade association or multiple trade associations in every single state that has regulated cannabis. And participating in those groups as well can really give you a leg up on your competitors by understanding compliance obligations as they change over time.
How about governmental or like simulated governmental like third-party audits? Does the operators engage in those types of services?
Absolutely. They're actually really, really important. One of Simplifya's main features is that we facilitate both self and third-party audits. So you can kind of run around your business and audit your own business to identify what you're doing wrong, as well as having someone else through our system come in and handle that and bring their expertise. We suggest that businesses should self-audit about once a month to once a quarter, maybe once every 6 months, depending on your operation. And then quarterly to yearly, they should bring someone in with outside expertise. It's really important to understand that, compliance is not static. Compliance is really about how you do your job every day and making sure that you do it correctly. And that can become very, very difficult as you have staff turnover, as you hire new managers. And so you had a manager and everything was great 6 months ago. But if you haven't checked up on your business, if you haven't done that audit, that test to where your operations are at, you could very easily see that you've slipped behind in many critical compliance areas through no fault of management other than the fact that you have a new person at that facility that's in charge of it, or you have some new bud tenders or new trimmers or new head cultivators that don't really understand maybe waste obligation function, and as a way to show your staff that you care about compliance, that this is a priority to you, and that you need to make sure that, your staff recognizes that.
So tell us then about Simplifya and how the program or the software works with respect to those types of functions and those types of manners of maintaining compliance.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Simplifya is a web-based app, monthly SaaS software where you just pay a nominal monthly fee, and we provide you with a variety of features. We track all of your licenses for you and give you reminders around renewals and things like that, with some really exciting enhancements coming by the end of the year to our licensing feature and services. We also manage all standard operating procedures. So we have template standard operating procedures for compliance-sensitive activities, as well as the ability to make your own and edit our templates for your business. You can then assign them around your company and track who's been up to what and whether they are actually doing what you say. We have a very robust document management system that kind of is a pre-created compliance binder system where we go through the regulations, find every document that the regulators require you to keep on your premises, and pre-organize all of that information, visualize what's there, and create an accountability system to make sure that you have all of your documents stored correctly and available for inspection upon request by regulators. We have a third-party audit feature and self-audit feature that I mentioned earlier. We take all the regulations, turn them into simple yes or no questions at a fifth grade reading level. You can walk around your facility with our proprietary iPad or iPhone app, answer yes or no, and it spits out a report that tells you what you're doing right and wrong. It goes even further than that, though. You can assign out areas of noncompliance to your staff and track their resolution. We're working on a lot of other fun stuff around inventory audits and things like that for marijuana businesses. And then we also have services for law firms and consultants and investors and things like that, landlords, everybody that's really working in the cannabis space to help them oversee cannabis businesses. We have a really interesting feature that we call Oversight Portal that would allow a bank or an investor to actually get a bird's eye view into the compliance status of a variety of cannabis businesses all at once. And then we're starting at the end of this year, starting to roll out a government services division as well to help cannabis regulatory agencies at the state and local level.
Wow, that sounds very robust and certainly very helpful. And you'll be at the seminar, obviously. Will people have the opportunity at some point, maybe before or after the seminar, to get into the software and be able to look at it, maybe do a demo or something like that?
Yeah, I'll be at the seminar for a couple of days and in Detroit. And then we're going to come back for a cannabis conference at the end of October. We can always do a remote demo, and everybody that signs up gets a free 2-week trial. So we want everybody to see our system, understand how valuable and supportive it can be for their operations. And we're looking forward to coming out to Michigan for the first time, launching our content out there, and supporting the legalization of cannabis throughout the great state of Michigan.
Yeah. So, and what the event at the end of October is Cannabis Aid, I believe. It's also at Cobo Hall. That event is what you're referring to, right?
Yes, we'll be out there for that as well at the end of the month. But first and foremost, October 11th, Cobo Hall, Cannabis Legal Group seminar. I will be there presenting, providing tips and best practices on compliance, and talking a little bit about why cannabis compliance is so important today.
Excellent. All right. Well, that is probably enough for today. Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate you making some time to help and to be on the show and help our viewers with some advice, really valuable advice with respect to compliance and the importance of maintaining it in the cannabis industry. And I will look forward to having you here in October 11th at Cobo Hall. If anybody is interested in tickets, you can go to our website, cannabis-legalgroup.com, where you will see a link where you can go and buy tickets. This is like less than 2 weeks away, so it's going to be another great event. We've done like 10 of them now, and this is definitely going to be our best one. Certainly when we have people, individuals from Colorado and other established markets, that's what people need to see, because like I said, they've been doing it there since 2012, 2013, and that's like 5 years now, or 4 full years, or 5 full years.
We will be coming up on our 5th or our 4th full year of adult use sales. The stores opened January 1, 2014. So we'll have had 4 full years of adult use sales here in Colorado pretty soon.
Speaking of adult use, I have to take every opportunity to remind people that on November 6th, Michigan is going to have the opportunity to have our own adult use legalization. And if people don't get out and vote, then it's not in the bag. People just think that it's a done deal, and it's definitely not a done deal. We definitely have to get out and vote for it. Proposal 1, vote yes on Proposal 1, because this is what an amazing opportunity to be the 10th state in the country to be able to legalize adult use marijuana, and we're going to be, I think, the second largest market in the state, behind only California. So cool, Jordan. Thank you again, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
My pleasure. We really appreciate you, Barton. Keep up the great work moving things forward on legalization, and anything we can do to support, please let us know.
Thanks, man.
All right. Have a great day. Happy Monday, everybody.